Well, since this pandemic hit our province, the Tenant Resource Advisory Center, also known as TRAC, has received roughly 300 calls from concerned tenants in BC. Joining me now is legal advocate with TRAC, Rob Patterson. Good morning.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Rob, there's a lot of anxiety right now, obviously. Tenants are out of work, unable to pay their bills. The province has offered some support to landlords, but what are some of the main concerns you're hearing right now from tenants?
I think the biggest concern we've heard is that tenants have been facing sort of a lack of income, lack of their regular income, either through their hours being cut or their entire job sort of disappearing because of the COVID pandemic. Thankfully, the government has, in their package for protecting people in the state of emergency, has put a moratorium on all kinds of evictions. So landlords can no longer serve notices to end tenancy during this period, which is good because not only does it mean that tenants won't be losing their homes through no fault of their own, but it also will help to ensure and protect the public health initiative of making sure we can all self-isolate in our own homes.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can you talk more about the 10-day notice to effectively end the tenancy?
Right. So typically, when we're in normal times, whenever a tenant is late on rent or hasn't paid their rent, a landlord can serve them with a 10-day notice to end their tenancy. And after they receive it, a tenant has 5 days to either pay the balance of that rent or to file to dispute the notice if they think they don't actually owe that money. If they don't fail to do either of those, their tenancy is conclusively deemed to end. So for many tenants right now, if that was still in play, it'd be very harrowing knowing that you'd have a very brief period of time to be able to make find that money. But that moratorium luckily protects tenants for now. I think, though, one of the big other concerns we've heard is that at the end of this period, when the state of emergency is lifted, those notices to end tenancy are going to kick back into effect. Landlords will be able to serve them again. And if tenants have missed any rent during this period, a landlord could, at this point in time, serve that notice to end tenancy on the first day after the emergency period ends. And the tenant would have 5 days to try and make up the missed rent for however long this period stretches for. And we think that's a huge concern. That could lead to a potentially huge number of evictions across this province. People who, have only been able to stay in the city they live in or this province entirely because of the long-term tenancy that has sort of protected them and a protected locked-in rent. We think it would be disastrous if the province allowed this to happen, especially considering that the Premier and the Minister of Housing have promised British Columbians that no one is going to lose their home. No tenant will lose their home because of COVID. And so I hope the government is sort of paying attention to this issue. And as this situation develops, they're going to take further policy steps to protect those tenants.
Mm-hmm. So I can see where the anxiety is right now, because once the state of emergency is lifted, landlords could potentially serve this 10-day notice. Is that what you're hearing from a lot of tenants right now?
Certainly, there are many tenants who are concerned because they know they're not going to be able to sort of find the money they're losing because of this pandemic by state of emergency ending.
Mm-hmm. Another thing you mentioned on the phone yesterday was landlords wanting to come in and still do house showings. Obviously, that's a huge concern right now as health officials are telling people to social distance. What's the general sense you're getting from tenants now?
So I think there have been, tenants have come to us with concerns about landlords wanting to do showings if they're rental units for sale or wanting to access the unit for other reasons. I think the government's done a really good step here in part of the emergency order was to prohibit landlords' right to access. So a tenant can still choose to let their landlord in if they feel comfortable, but a landlord no longer has the right to, during this emergency period, to serve written notice on the tenant to say, I'm coming in, at least in 24 hours and you have to be ready for me. Now a tenant can sort of say, no, I'm not going to consent to your entry because I'm concerned about the health of myself and health of my family. I think that tenants and landlords, from what I've been able to hear, have generally been able to work around that. In cases where landlords want to do some kind of showing, a tenant can sort of get their phone or their camera out and do a virtual showing on behalf of the landlord. And I hope that more people are going to work together in that kind of way to solve this problem. Because at the end of the day, this and for both this issue and the issue of facing renters in terms of lost income, it's a burden that needs to be borne by everybody together. No single group, not tenants nor landlords, can sort of bear the weight of this issue together, but on their own, rather, they have to work together, and we're hoping to see that going forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Rob, for painting this issue for us. It is 7:55 now. We're going to take a break. Thank you so much for joining us, Rob.